Okay.
Welcome. My name is Sandra Corrado of Next Level Consulting. We are a wellness and fitness company. And I have my guest, colleague, and friend, Susan Kagan today. And we're going to talk about mental health first aid. So, Susan, thank you for joining me today.
Well, thank you, Sandra. It's an absolute pleasure. I look forward to having a chat with you.
My pleasure as well.
Yeah.
So we met in about 2017 in a networking group. And I remember when you had joined, you were talking about mental health first aid. And I had taken first aid for many years because of the work that I do. It's a requirement for my work, like in the workplace. And then also because I work in, different fitness settings. It's a requirement for my certifications and my licensing, but I'd never heard of mental health first aid. So I was very curious when I started to notice, that you were talking about this. I thought, wow, this is very interesting, very new. And I decided to take mental health first aid, and I really found it beneficial. So the reason for having this conversation is because I want to be able to have you share with those that are listening to this recording, what is mental health first aid all about? Why do we need it? How beneficial it is? And before we go into the conversation, there's a stat that I wanted to share. Now, this is with respect to the youth. So I was part of a panel a few years ago, actually, I think it was 2021. And we were different wellness practitioners, and one of the companies that was part of this panel that had been put together was a company that was hotline service for the youth. And they had shared a stat that when I heard it, I just thought, wow, there is definitely a need for support. So what they shared was in 2019, they had about, from what I remember, 1.6 million calls from the youth calling in, and they were in some type of distress or anxiety or worry or major issue, or perhaps even at a suicidal point. It was a combination. And for 2020, the call rate went up to 4.6 or 4.8. I don't remember exactly which number, but it was one of those two numbers.
That's not surprising.
That was a huge, huge increase in the amount of youth that needed assistance that reached out. Yeah. And now, although I don't have the actual stat for Canada, I have read different articles on how there is a rise in distress, anxiety, different, I'm going to call them disorders that individuals are dealing with, and also the different stressors and how it's rippling into workplaces, and how it's, obviously it's going to be affecting family, it's going to be affecting our health. So as a result of the fact that there is a need, I wanted to have you on to talk about your mental health first aid. But first of all, I would love those that are tuning in to hear about, what is it? First of all, what is your background? Yep. And what led you to teach this mental health first aid course?
Okay, great question. I know people listening don't know me, but I'm a nurse by background. I spent most of my career teaching, over 33 years, in a community college university program, Seneca York. And mostly what I focused on was mental health and ethics. So that was my main focus. Now, while I was teaching, I did a number of other things as well in terms of clinical practice. Worked as a sexual assault nurse examiner, domestic violence nurse. I worked on the mental health crisis team in the general hospital. And I also worked at a place called Cedar Center, which focuses on trauma. The center helps people that have been abused as children manage as they get older with post-traumatic stress and trauma. So I did psychoeducational groups. So I've had both teaching and clinical practice. Well, I grew older, and I figured I'd retire from full-time work, and that was in 2016. But I had to have a plan. And I wasn't just going to leave and just not do anything. So somebody suggested mental health first aid training. It would just be a perfect fit. And I wasn't quite sure, but I figured I would do it and give it a try. And I took that training and I was up and running almost before I retired, started to do the trainings. And I thoroughly became engaged with it. I saw the benefit and really, really began to enjoy it. I know I also do mental health workshops, for corporate organizations, profit and nonprofit. During COVID, we did, to help people cope. A lot of it is about mental health and coping. Now, what really informs my approach to mental health education primarily is that I care about people and their welfare. I want to understand what's happening with people. And if I get in a situation where I'm starting to get judgmental, I suspend that. And I pull out my curiosity and ask myself, what's going on here? To try to figure out what's going on. It's my concern for people that's guided my career, my passion, and my focus on lifelong learning. And that's how I approach education. People are excited about learning for the most part. They want to learn. And I think when you enter into a discussion with them and they're free to ask questions, they're not judged, it really works.
So you're coming from a place from the heart because you care about people and you care about their well-being, and you have a lot of experience to share. So this is what you're bringing to people when they engage you to teach a workshop, and all the other offerings that you have. So that's so beautiful to hear, and your work is very needed. Your experience is very needed.
Thank you.
I attended the 2-day workshop, the mental health first aid workshop, and I found there were, although, I am a coach, and, I've done a lot of research. I've also, researched trauma. I mean, I've been through my own trauma. We all have something in our background. I found it very beneficial to go through the program. So in addition to the first aid, which is about, broken bones and fingers and all that kind of stuff, and, someone stopped breathing, the mental health first aid I found very beneficial because, there are times that, we don't really know what resources are out there, or even how to help someone. And I found going through your workshop, and also the fact that you were able to share some live examples from your background, very, very helpful. So can you share a little bit about your program? Like, some of the things, the key points of your program?
Yeah, I'll start at the beginning. This is a program that's administered by the Mental Health Commission of Canada to start with. And, a person skilled in mental health first aid can make an immediate difference, providing support, comfort to somebody that's either going through a mental health crisis or they're struggling with their mental well-being. It's a certificate program. It's evidence-based. And it teaches people skills in order to provide mental health first aid to start with. Okay, it's a first aid model. Okay, that's the important thing. And it's easy to comprehend that when we're talking about physical first aid where somebody's broken a bone, they have a heart attack. And what we do, we go up to them, are you okay? Can I help? So you're assessing. And then you see what's going on, and then you assist them, you support them, you call for help. That's the model. Mental health first aid is no different. Okay, and I'll go through some of it and explain. It came from Australia actually in 2010. It's a research program. Randomized controlled trials were used to test the value of the program, and it came out just smashing. I mean, it was just so profound in how people changed their attitudes, their willingness to approach people, which is a big problem because of the stigma, people are often afraid to approach their, I'm going to do something wrong. Am I going to say something wrong? Am I going to hurt them more? And they're afraid, they're uncomfortable because they don't understand it. So this program, to me, that's the biggest benefit. Is that, I mean, there's many benefits, which I'll talk about, but the biggest thing is that people are now online talking, talking about mental health. They can say, oh, this, other people are talking about it. Some people will share a little bit about their family. I always start out by sharing a bit about my past, the struggles I've had in the past, because I think you need to have that transparency, to be vulnerable so people can see that it's okay. Like, I can do it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, maybe you can do it,
Mm-hmm.
and you won't fall apart. And people are there to support, they're there to listen, you know, and we don't allow judgment. I mean, that's really, really a key part of it. But it's important to hear that discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the biggest things I saw when I was doing it in person at the beginning is after the 2 days, you know, people would walk out of the room with this newfound confidence.
Mm-hmm.
I can do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that to me is a key part, in addition to the skills you learn.
Yeah. And you created a safe space too.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I remember you had shared that if anything was shared, that someone felt safe,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
sharing, that it
Yeah.
stayed in the room.
Yeah.
So, you know, so
Yeah.
if people could share what it was that they were going through, and then you were able to assist, like through the course material, you were able to assist and direct, which was really
Yeah.
great. So
Absolutely.
I really like
And
that.
that's key,
Mm.
having that safe space. And I think, you know, people have to see that. And I think it's so important. And to me, that's the beauty of this, that I get to talk to people and I get to hear what their world's like. Content's all the same,
Mm-hmm.
but the way it plays out in each of the different sessions is totally different.
Mm-hmm.
The way it's manipulated, the way people talk about it, the way they understand it and experience it.
Mm-hmm.
It's very different. That's what's exciting. I think, you know, and it opens people's minds. I mean, it's a broad view of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it opens people's minds up, and they can think, well, I've got a family member struggling, and I've never known what to do. You know, I've been afraid. Or maybe I can say to them, hey, I noticed that you're not coming out as much. You seem more tired. I'm concerned. How can I help?
Mm-hmm.
They have the confidence to approach them and say that, not be worried that they're going to blow them off.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they do, you say, okay, it's not me. I'll try again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's so important because
Yeah, I think so.
oftentimes people, when they're going through challenge, they're afraid to state it because they don't want to be judged. So they put on a smile, but behind that smile is a lot of you know, emotion, and
Yeah.
they're having difficulty managing. And
Yeah.
that is not the way to live a life
Mm-hmm.
at all.
No, and it doesn't have to be that way. There's help out there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the other important part that we try and ingrain in people and help them understand. There's help out there.
Right.
Because people that are struggling with mental health issues, whether it be their mental well-being, whether it be a crisis, they feel alone.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nobody to help them.
Yeah.
And part of this is that we say, hey, yeah, there is help out there.
So what are some of high level, what are some of the topics that you cover through your first aid course?
Yeah, for sure. This is set up in a 3-module program. It's 9 hours, 3 modules. The first module is done all on your own. You log on, you do that. It's about 2 hours. And that basically talks about all the key concepts about mental health first aid. So it's the foundation. It talks about the core mental health first aid actions in module 1. And that's really an important part. And we refer to that as LGs. And each of the letters stand for something. So, for example, A would be approach, assess, and assist. So much like I said before, how do you approach somebody? You know, hey, you have them showing up for life, or you're not coming out. You know, I'm concerned. How do you approach them? How do you assess them? How do you assist them? Then we talk about listening non-judgmentally. Key part, suspend your judgment, be curious. You're not going to get anywhere unless you have that non-judgmental listening, building trust.
For
is
sure.
all part of that. Giving reassurance and information. It's all about hope and optimism. You have to try and instill that. Then there's the 2 E's, which is encouraging resources, whether it's professional, whether it's other resources like friends and family. Professional resources, often the first place to start is a doctor. But then we go, family doctor. But then we go through other kinds of agencies that are out there in the community as well. But that's community specific. You need to build your own repertoire of places to refer people, whether it's a helpline or whatever. And then self-care is the last one. Part of this is about looking after yourself, checking in with yourself as a helper. What do I need? Something might be going wrong with me now. And how do I deal with that? Not to be afraid of it. So that's the core actions, and we spend time with it, plus a bunch of other information about the program. Then we go on to module 2 and 3, which are virtual. Module 2, we talk about and focus on mental well-being. There's case scenarios where you use all these concepts. You go into groups, you talk about these cases, you come up with the LG actions that are appropriate for that situation. We talk about depression, we talk about anxiety, and we talk about substance use, and also diversity. All these cases are embedded with diversity and differences, and how to approach that, how to deal with diversity and differences, and how you communicate. Module 3 is all about crises, panic attacks, suicide, reaction to traumatic event, and severe use of alcohol or substances. And once again, we go into groups, we do case scenarios, work through the LG actions. How could they be appropriately used in this situation? How can you help? So that's the layout of the program. It's embedded, like I said, in virtual. The course is, the way I teach it, you're never doing one thing for any more than 10, 15 minutes. It's changed all the time, whether it's a discussion, whether it's a poll, whether it's a breakout group, whether it's a video. The other thing that sort of an overlay with this, I think, is really important. We're talking about mental health for 9 hours. It can be difficult. Okay, it can be difficult for people. It can be triggering for many. So people need to, we prepare people for that in terms of supports and what you need to do. Say it's okay to go offline. If you need to take a break, we talk about supports, and I have a moderator who's trained. So if somebody is having a struggle, especially on day 2, when we talk about suicide. So like you said before, we try and make this as safe and as comfortable as possible.
And I believe one of the reasons why people are afraid to approach others is because, well, actually 2. One is, what do I say? And secondly, it can be triggering for us when we start to, start to help someone, even if it's just a matter of referring, but we're looking at reality of life. And, we all have our challenges.
Absolutely.
And especially when someone's going through some very difficult challenges, and we're, now taking the step of helping them, not taking the burden, but actually just saying, how can I assist you? Is there something I can do to assist you? Or can I refer you maybe to, there's this agency that I know, or this person like Susan Kagan that, she has this course, or, whatever the suggestion may be, because I've just taken a scenario that really has no context to it. It becomes very real that it starts to raise up our issues as well. And maybe,
absolutely. Yeah.
And maybe we haven't dealt with some of our issues. So it can be triggering for us. So I think the first step, of reaching out is usually one that people don't take for that very reason. What do I say? What if they react? What if they get upset? How are they going to, view me? Because now I've kind of acknowledged that there's an issue, like all of that. And it's huge. It can get huge in someone's mind.
No question. I think people need to also be aware, and this is a difficult part too, is sometimes people don't want help. They're not ready for it. And I think, you can make suggestions, but you have to be aware that it's their choice. And you have to support that, as difficult as it can be.
Yep.
You may have some great ideas, but there's no.
Very
and
true.
I think you have to accept that, take them accept where they're at that point in time. And maybe try when they're ready, or let them know I'm here when you're ready. It's hard.
Yes,
it may seem obvious to you. The answer's right here. This is what'll fix it. But they're not ready.
Yeah. When the expression of when you're in the forest, you don't really see the trees.
Yes.
So when we're in problem, we don't see the solution to problem. It's only when we step back.
Yeah.
And if we're not able to step back ourselves, sometimes having someone neutral that can just say, you know what, I notice this, or I notice this. Do you need a hand?
Yeah.
That can be enough sometimes to just say, actually, I do. And I didn't realize that, this is what I was doing, because we can get into our own patterns, right?
Yeah.
And I believe if we approach the taking the initial step of going to, say, a loved one, family member, or colleague with the intention of, I care about family member, friend, colleague, neighbor. It's the context is different when we approach in that fashion. Like, I really care about the well-being of my friend, colleague, neighbor. And I just want them to know that I care about them. So even conveying that can actually have a huge effect on,
sure.
our loved one, or, those that are in our circle. So, yeah,
for sure. You don't want to get into a situation where you're telling people what to do.
Yeah, exactly.
You always ask, don't tell.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be respectful.
Yep.
Because when you start telling people what to do, it doesn't work.
Right.
I think we've all tried that. Especially when it comes to children, we want to tell them what to do when they're younger, particularly.
Mm-hmm.
And it never works.
True.
So we have to be respectful of where people are at. So you ask and don't tell.
Right. And there are agencies that can actually do more of the heavy lifting. So it's more just saying, I care about you, and I heard about, and then if they, again, it's a choice for them. If they choose to take advantage of the whatever agency it is that's there, then the agency that is that has the training and the knowledge, they can help guide our loved one or cherished friend or colleague through the steps of healing, or seeing shifting perceptions, or whatever it is that they need. So
absolutely.
The workshop, who would you recommend take this workshop?
Almost anybody could take this. It's appropriate for people, especially who are working with the public or people in distress. So that could be people in the library, people that work for Parks and Rec, emergency services, law, police, firefighters, human resource professionals are a great group to have this information, because they can deal with their staff that way, and they can advocate to have all their staff trained with this. So colleague to colleague, people are being supportive and compassionate to each other and caring. So there's no limits to it. Workplace leaders, occupational health and safety, volunteers. I can remember several trainings I did for volunteers at McKinsey Health. Really important, because you're dealing with people. You're on the front line. People that have family members that are struggling with mental health and they don't know what to do. I think it's a good thing. Colleagues, or just themselves sometimes too, because we talk a lot about self-care. Checking in with yourself. What do I need now? What's going on? Things don't seem right. Where do I go for help? Who do I reach out to?
In a company setting, I would also recommend that managers, VPs, and the Joint Health and Safety Committee members take this, because when there is an emergency or a health and safety issue in a company, having, again, my background is human resources, and I've also been trained in health and safety. Knowing the mental, or having the mental health first aid certificate and knowledge is very helpful, because now even if there's first aid, like physical first aid situation, understanding the mental health first aid protocols,
it's different.
They go hand in hand. So we give first aid, being mindful of the state that the person that may have been injured, or whatever issue there is. You're approaching the first aid in a very different mindset, And I think they go hand in hand. And so that is my, that would be my recommendation, because of my background in human resources, my background in health and safety, and the fact that I had to take first aid for many, many years. That would be my recommendation. So question for, say there's someone that we notice that is going through some major stress, some situation, or, some difficulty, difficult situation that they're managing. What would be some tips that you would recommend for them as a start?
Okay. First thing, before I start giving tips, are two things that I like to say.
Sure.
First of all, I think we all have toolkits. We build up coping tools based on the stress we've been through and how we learn to manage. So we've got to fill that bag up, try new things to start with. The second thing is you need a foundation of looking after yourself. So if you're not sleeping well and you're not eating well, stress is going to escalate. Like, just think about how you feel if you haven't slept well the night before. Like, if something comes your way, you go, I don't want to deal with this. Get rid of it, And another day when you've slept well, okay, I'm good for this today. I can manage it. So those two foundations are really important. But really looking after yourself. And the toolkit, and let me talk a bit about that. And the way I approach a toolkit is you got to pull things out, and not everything is going to work. And sometimes they may work in one situation, they may not work in another situation. So start with something you're comfortable with. It could be calling a friend. It could be going for a walk. It could be reading a book. It could be listening to music. It could be mindfulness, focusing on the moment, breathing, taking a deep breath and continuing that. I had an experience this morning where I was in a group and we meditated. And this is really difficult for me at times to do this, but I was so calm. I didn't have one of those crazy thoughts running through my head at all. And that's rare, because usually you get these thoughts running through your head. You want to get rid of them, but you just have to welcome them.
I understand that.
Yes, first time in a long time that I didn't have any of these thoughts. It was just so peaceful. That can help. Listening to music. There could be, so many other things. The other two things I focus on is self-compassion. When you're having a lot of stress, it often goes hand in hand, because we tend to be this way as humans. We beat ourselves up. We could get really hard on ourselves. We tend to treat ourselves worse than our friends, or our family. So I think focusing on self-compassion, being kind to yourself, talking to yourself nice things, saying, this is okay. It could happen to anybody. I make mistakes. I'm only human. That common humanity can really be helpful, but it's a practice. Like, it doesn't come easy. You got to practice it. The other thing is gratitude. I strongly advocate, I think gratitude, taking time. And when you're in the midst of something stressful, just pull back and say, okay, what am I grateful for today? This is difficult. But what am I grateful for? Maybe it's the cup of coffee in the morning. Maybe it's the fresh air. Maybe it's the weather. My family. And even to go as far as keeping a journal. Like, every day writing down 2 or 3 things you're grateful for, because that changes your brain. Over time, the negativity goes if you keep doing that. So that's another thing I think is really, really important. It's about kindness to yourself. Easier for us to do it to other people. Be kind to other people, compassionate. When it comes to ourselves, it's so difficult. So those are just some approaches that I think can really, really help. But it's work. You can't just turn the switch off and just say, go away, stress. It's work. You have to be actively engaged with it, and you have to be motivated.
Very true.
Yeah.
It's making a choice, making a decision, and then committing to it. I know, so in 2003, I burnt out, and I know people ask me, well, what does burnt out mean? Well, I got to a point where I wasn't able to focus, wasn't able to concentrate, and I was basically, I was sleeping 23 to 24 hours a day. Now, that is, kind of an extreme case, and it happened as a result of a lot of different things over many years. Now, I remember the first thing I had to learn, because my mind was racing really fast, was actually slowing this down, but it was hard. And when people said, be mindful of your thoughts, or, do some meditation. Well, I would be sitting there and it's like, it's really hard to sit for 5 minutes when your mind is going all over the place. I also needed to challenge my thoughts. Is that really true? And
Absolutely.
over a period of time, then I was able to actually challenge my thoughts. Well, that's not really true. That is so irrational. Where did that come from? Then that's where the compassion came in. Well, it came in at, a different part, or maybe I heard it from someone, and then all of a sudden I internalized that judgment on myself. But having gone through the journey of where I'm at, or where I'm at right now, it allowed me the opportunity of learning so many different tools. So I have a huge toolkit. And you're right, there are some tools that work best in this situation and other tools that work better. And what else happened? I mean, I got a chance to learn from doctors and practitioners globally. So it opened up my eyes to a lot of different things that I was not aware of.
There's lots out there. I mean, the other one I want to add is affirmation.
Yes.
To come up with affirmations. The one that I always fall back on is this too will pass.
Yep.
I mean, there's many. There's many of them.
I like that one.
Yeah, but there's many, and I think you have to find one that fits you. And so I think it's rich in things you can do. But I'm also appreciating for some people, especially if you're stressed and anxious, it can be hard.
Yep.
And that's why what you want to do is try and catch things when they're not so bad, when you're kind of mildly struggling and things are just a little bit off. You're somewhat anxious, but you're coping, to catch it then before it escalates, because it can escalate really quickly. These tools work better then.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. One thing, so I've been doing a deep dive on trauma, and I know this is, well, actually it ties in. One thing that I learned that really stood out is when we are undergoing stress and it, increases or it's constant, what happens is our nervous system gets stuck in the sympathetic fight or flight, which means that now on a daily basis, we constantly have underlying stress. We don't even realize it, but our body is having to deal with it and managing it. And our bodies are amazing. However, if we stay in that chronic stress, flight or fight, what happens is it might be one small, relatively small event that could trigger us that then escalates everything. Absolutely, so as you were saying, if we start, managing our well-being and, one step at a time, like maybe the thoughts or, going out in nature, maybe doing some mindfulness, whatever it is that works for us, little by little, we can start walking ourselves along the path of, oh, okay, well, now you see things, oh, I'm being stressed. Why am I being stressed? And start questioning or using tools, or so it empowers us. So anyways, to summarize, I really found the course. So I did a 2-day in-person course because this was 2019. And I found it to be so valuable. So I really wanted to.
I'm so glad.
I just thought, wow, this would have been nice to have so many years ago, like even in the company that I was working at so many years ago. But anyways, there's a perfection in timing. And I wanted to have this opportunity to, chat more about this and also record it so that people have the opportunity of learning and know that it's available. So I'd like to thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. And if anybody's interested, please feel free to contact me. They just want to talk about it. And Sandra can leave the information.
Maybe you can share with us, if anyone that wishes to contact you, what is the best way to contact you?
Email probably. Kagan _51@hotmail.com.
Okay. And Kagan is Kagan?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I'd be glad to talk more with anyone who's got questions.
Perfect. So you'll be able to also email some information on the mental health first aid certificate. And I, as I mentioned, I do believe that it's important that everyone take it. So thank you so much,
for that
Susan.
Support. I appreciate this very much, and best to everyone listening.
Yes,
thank you, Sandra.
Thank you so much, Susan, for your time. And for those of you that are listening, do maybe listen to this once again. I would highly recommend that you take it. And again, my name is Sandra Corrado of Next Level Consulting, and my focus is assisting women who are going through burnout, or on their way of burnout or life-altering situations, and assisting them finding a conscious way forward while looking after the well-being of all 7 areas of life. So, and my focus for the interviews is sharing or speaking with people, friends, colleagues that I know offer information and tips and tools or services to help complement people's well-being. This is a reason why I do these interviews. So again, Susan, thank you so much.
Thank you
And for
so
those
much.
of you that are joining us, thank you. Until next time.